Hey there, friends. How's it going? Richard coming to you here from within the Tesla Model 3. Why? Because we're celebrating let's call it a special occasion, though not really. It's been exactly 1 year. 1 year ago today is when I took delivery of this Tesla Model 3 2020 long range edition. So I want to share some of my experiences thus far in the last year with this car, including some of the costs, some of the positives, negatives, and maybe those insights can help inform you if you're thinking about getting an EV right about now. So the first thing that I want to talk about are numbers, because numbers are most people that ask me about driving this vehicle. They want to know about the cost versus a regular car, etc., etc. So let's jump straight to it. Let's talk about maintenance items first. So maintenance on a traditional gas car, you'll have things like oil changes, spark plug, fuel filter, air filter, all those kinds of things. Now, it's not to say that an electric vehicle, and this particular Tesla Model 3 doesn't have its own set of maintenance items, but they're far fewer on an electric vehicle than they are on a traditional gas-powered vehicle. So grand total, how much did I spend in the last year on maintenance items? $7. $7. Well, actually, it was like $6.90, but I'll round up. Why not? Yep, the only thing in terms of maintenance that I had to buy for this vehicle was windshield washer fluid. Yep, from the time that I took delivery of this vehicle, I haven't had to do any other maintenance on this car. And I'm not someone who just lets cars go for miles extending over oil changes and whatnot. When I used to have a gas-powered vehicle, I used to do my own oil changes, air filter, spark plugs. I even changed transmission fluid. Heck, I even one time tried to change the timing belt on my Volkswagen Passat. So I know about cars. I know how important and critical maintenance is. So I don't overlook those things. So in this vehicle, the only maintenance item that I had to spend money on was windshield washer fluid from the time that I took delivery until now. Now, that being said, it may be I may be due for a few things, which we'll talk about. So one of the things that I haven't done yet, which I don't think I need to yet, I've been checking the treads on the tires, would be to maybe get new tires. So one of the most critical numbers is going to be how many miles have I driven, right? Because numbers and cost and whatnot don't make any sense without the context of how many miles have I driven. So from the time that I took this vehicle until today, I took vehicle from the Tesla delivery center in Brooklyn with 4,545 miles. And as of this moment that I'm in this vehicle, I currently have on the odometer 24,043 miles, meaning that I've driven 19,098 miles in the last year. Now that's considerably more than, estimates have the normal or the average American drives. But that included a number of trips to visit Steph's family in Connecticut. That included trips to Washington, D.C. for a weekend, included a trip to Savannah, Georgia. And last November when we drove to Denver, Colorado and back. So a lot of miles have been put on this car. So a lot of different experiences in that drive, in that 20,000, just shy of 20,000 miles. So yeah, maintenance. For this vehicle, I have spent $7 on maintenance items, and that was just windshield washer fluid. But that's not to say there aren't things that are coming up. I mean, I guess if I want to, I could replace the windshield wipers, the wiper blades, but they've been performing well. The brakes, again, I haven't had issue with brakes, and with electric vehicles, because of regenerative braking, which I rely on a lot, there's a lot of meat left on the brake pad, so I'm not terribly concerned about that either. There are some other maybe service items like for Tesla to check suspension and whatnot, but at 24,000 miles, those aren't major concerns right now. I do expect maybe in the next 6 to 8 months, I'll consider, actually the one thing that I do need to do, which Tesla does at a cost, I think it's like $35 or $50, but it's rotate my tires. All I'm going to do is when the weather ends up just a little bit warmer, take the car, go visit my parents. I have, from my days of working on my gas powered vehicles, I have a floor jack and whatnot, take 10-15 minutes and then just do my own tire rotations to save the cost there. But again, if I wanted to pay Tesla to do it, I think it's $35. Let's just say $50 if I add a tip or something like that. So in terms of maintenance cost over 1 year for this vehicle, $7. All right, now we've talked about mileage, right? Just shy of 20,000 miles driven in this vehicle. We've talked about maintenance. Now, one of the biggest things that almost everyone asks me about this vehicle, who's curious about the driving experience and the cost versus a traditional gas car, is how much does it cost to charge? Okay, and it's a fair question, because if you're considering going from a gas powered vehicle to an electric vehicle, right, there are some considerations to have. So all in, to charge this car up for almost 20,000 miles over the course of the last year, it has cost me $2,195.02. Okay. Now you might be thinking, man, Rich, that is pretty high. And you know what? It might be. Why is that? Well, as I've shared in other videos, I live here in New York City. I live in an apartment building. I have to rely on off-street parking. Where I work, I don't have access to a charging station. I don't have access to an outlet. So I have to rely strictly on public chargers to charge this vehicle. If you, however, have access to an outlet at home, even a 110 outlet, or access to an outlet or a charger at work or something like that, the cost of charging a vehicle, electric vehicle, this vehicle or some other vehicle, should be significantly lower. Now, keep in mind, I've driven this thing more than the average, right, of like 12 or 15,000 miles that some consumer reports say the average American drives. So 20,000 miles, $2,000 to charge. You know, what is that? What's 20,000 divided by 2,195 is about $9.11 per mile. Am I right about that math? Right. So I don't know, compare it to your own costs, right? What you have to, and plus $7, right? I've got to also include the $7 for maintenance. So those are your costs. But if I've relied strictly on Tesla superchargers, I did charge maybe about, if I really think about it, 10 to 15 times not on superchargers. And that would have been, there were a couple times at like my parents' house, I was able to charge just connecting to an outlet in the garage. A couple of times when Steph and I at an Airbnb, we were able to plug into an outlet. A handful of times, off the top of my head, in Savannah, in Chicago, there were outlets, destination chargers, or just public chargers that are available not just to Tesla, but to practically any vehicle. So I was able to connect to those. So man, about 10 or 15 times, I was able to add juice to this vehicle, not paying for it. And that was because there was an outlet, you know, either someone I was visiting, an Airbnb, or a public charger that anyone has access to. But put those aside, right? Out of pocket, I paid just about $2,200 for charging over the course of the year to drive this baby 20,000 miles. So that's it for numbers. I want to talk now about the experience, positives, negatives about that. And again, I think context is important here because people, you know, if you've driven a certain kind of car before, that will serve as the framework for how you view driving an electric vehicle. My most recent car, or the car before this one, was a 2015 Mercedes C-Class. Before that, I've driven an Altima, had a Passat, which I love. I love that Passat. Buick Rendezvous, a Dodge Stratus. So I've driven different cars, mostly in that like sedan family of cars. And I've done a lot of my own work to know like about cost of repairing, the time to repair, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in terms of the drivability of this car, absolutely incredible. Absolutely. I loved the Benz. I will say that. The Benz was just a great car to drive. It just sounded incredible. It looked incredible. It felt incredible. It was a luxury experience. It's actually the 2015 C300 luxury model that I had. So that was a great experience, a beautiful car. This car gives me, I wouldn't say a parallel experience, because it is somewhat different. Mercedes, the apportionment in the Mercedes was significantly, I think, better than this inside of this Tesla. So the interior can look sort of simplistic, minimalistic in the Tesla, whereas the Mercedes, for instance, was just everything hugging you. Everything was supporting. I don't know, it just felt like you can walk into like your grandparents' house and you know it's your grandparents' house, right? Or if you put a video of, let's say, your grandparents' house and show it to 10 of your friends, they'll likely say, oh, is that your grandparents' house? That's how I felt in Mercedes-Benz, right? There was a certain experience in that, whereas this, it's a different feel. It's intended to be a different feel. So it's minimalistic. I wouldn't call it, maybe a little futuristic, but definitely minimalistic. You only got what you need in here. You don't need anything else, and you learn to live. Like, I actually don't like, now that I think about it, right, when I drive or go into my Steph's car, or let's say my sister's car, I actually don't like all these buttons. Everything is a different button, and that occupies so much mental space. I've got to know that the windshield wiper is this thing, and then to change heating, it's this. It's like all different knobs for one thing. It's actually very wasteful in terms of materials as well, right? To have a knob for this, another knob for that, another. So everything is centralized here in the panel. So I like the experience of just consolidating it. There have been changes in the UI of the Tesla thing, which I don't know if it's bad. I don't want to say it's bad. It's just because it was a wholesale change, it's hard to keep up with it, I guess. If you had an iPhone, I use an iPhone, right? The experience, even as they update it, it's pretty consistent across upgrades, whereas the Tesla has made changes to its UI experience, like wholesale changes, and so you have to learn where things are again. So that was a little frustrating. I want to talk about charging, because that's something that a lot of people ask about. And it hasn't really been a challenge. Fortunately for me, near my office, there is a supercharger. It's like 5 minutes away. And so what I'll generally do is once a week or so, or twice a week, depending on my needs, I'll like have lunch there. Generally, I'll go there, plug in, hop. It's in there's like a 7-Eleven there, a Wendy's. There's a couple food options. So I'll go plug in, go into the station, eat my lunch, and then by the time I'm done with it, my car is ready to go for the rest of the week or so. So it hasn't been detrimental. It hasn't added any unnecessary time or inconvenience to my life. There is a little more planning, right? A gas station, there's one 5 blocks away, every 5, whatever it is. Or, driving that on a long trip, right? A road trip, that gas stations are pretty widespread and available. Whereas chargers, let's talk about charging, because that's an experience that a lot of people want to ask me about and want to know more about. So I think that you have to separate out and bifurcate your normal day-to-day driving versus your long road trips, because those are two different things. For short day-to-day driving, I think that for most people, within about 2 weeks, you'll figure out your routine. You're going to go to the same 2 or 3 chargers. If you have charging at home, there's no question about it. You just charge at home or, at work, not even think about it. Like you can't think about an electric vehicle filling up, right? Now it's a different experience. It's just let me put it this way. If I had a charger at home or at my office or work or whatever, an outlet, my battery would never fall below 70%. I would always be at 80%, right? Because it'd become part of my routine that when I get home, I'd plug in, go to sleep. And then for me to do my day-to-day driving, for most people, it's not gonna take more than about 10%, I think. Let's say 20%, right? But then you get home, you plug in, by the time you get up in the morning, you're back to the 80%. So if you have access to an outlet, it absolutely does not change your life. If, however, you're like me, you live in an apartment building, got off-street parking, you don't have access to an outlet anywhere, you'll find your chargers, right? I have a friend who recently purchased a Volkswagen ID4, and he said the same thing. It actually comes with like 3 years of Electrify America included. So what he does is, instead of charging at home and paying, even though he's paying less than gas, He says he's just once a week he goes to an Electrify America station, charges up, does the same thing, eats lunch there, and then he doesn't pay anything. It becomes part of your life. But for sure, your day-to-day driving, you're probably accessing the same 2 or 3 chargers all throughout the week, right? So once you know where they are, you know where you're going, you know the times when they're available, you know like traffic through it, you know how long they take. It becomes seamless part of your life. For long road trips, that's where it may take a little more planning, and that's where I think the Tesla supercharger network shines. Because in this car, we've taken, I guess the 3 long trips were Washington, D.C., we then drove to Savannah, Georgia, and then finally we drove to Denver, Colorado. From our first trip, New York City to D.C., I was a little like up my butt about making sure I charged up before we left, making sure, we charged up while we were there. For Savannah, I mapped it out before we had gone, but we kind of deviated from what I plotted out a little bit. To Denver, I didn't even think about it. We just got in the car, packed our stuff, and then I think like the car said, within about 20 minutes, go to the charging station. I was like, okay, we got to charge up here. Boom, 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 boom. I just trust the navigation system, the trip planner, and it just tells us go here, go there. Not a big deal. So I think you got to, if you're looking at it just through the lens of long-term trips, it's not really doing it justice, because the experience of daily driving is different from a long road trip. Again, if you have access to an outlet at home or at work, or the ability to install a charger at home or at work, oh my gosh, you will not regret it. I'm not saying just Tesla, but an EV generally, just you don't have to think about it anymore. You just get home, you get to your office or you get to work, you plug in, and you're always, gas, sometimes people will leave it till the end. It's like, oh, I got to put gas in my car. With this, you're never worried about it. For long trips, however, it becomes a little different. And I think as more and more chargers show up and pop up along the roads, that it's going to become less challenging. But right now, at least with this Tesla Model 3, I have no concerns about driving, to Denver, Colorado and further. It was a pretty seamless experience. We never had to struggle to find a charger. The trip planner shows you what chargers or supercharging stations are available. Whereas other charging networks, I've heard bad stories about, it's a hodgepodge of different networks not communicating to each other. So you kind of got to struggle to figure it out. What else about this car can I share? The space inside for a sedan, and it's a smaller sedan, is huge, because you've got the interior feels larger. It feels like a mid-size to a large sedan, and that's because the battery sits low to the ground, so more space inside of the cabin. Then you also have space. The trunk is a pretty large trunk. There's a sub-trunk that you can put stuff inside of there. I usually keep all of my trip essentials, the Tesla charging travel cable, a travel jack, my tire repair kit, and a heavy-duty extension cord, just in case I get to a place and I can charge, but I need an extension cord. All that stuff usually is in the sub-trunk, and then when we travel, additional things I'll throw in there, but a lot of space. And then on top of that, you've got a pretty deep front trunk, ergo front. What we usually do with that is, Stephanie bought me for my birthday last year a travel cooler bag, so we'll put any kind of like snacks, drinks with some ice inside of the cooler bag, put that in the front, and it's absolutely incredible. As you've seen in our videos, or as you may have seen in our videos, John sort of hangs out in the back here, does his thing, falls asleep. So the car, interior space-wise, absolutely incredible. Great space. What else can I share about this car? I mean, the drive, let's talk about the drive. The drive is boss. When you need to come off of, it shines particularly well, or it really shines through, and Stephanie has said this as well about when she's driven this car, coming off a ramp, especially on a highway, interstate or something like that, where you've got traffic traveling pretty fast. Her car, I've told her this, I smashed the gas pedal, the accelerator, and it doesn't go, it doesn't move. Whereas this car, if you floor the accelerator pad, you are firing off. And, this car has acceleration boost, which should be pushing you 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds. So that's a real benefit. I don't worry about, like, if I have to speed up or pull back to change lanes, it's never a concern. One pedal braking is amazing, game changer. Love the fact that I can pretty much my commute on a day-to-day basis, I'm not really touching the brake pedal. It's just relying on one pedal driving and the regen braking. My biggest concern that I've experienced with this vehicle is actually not me driving it. It's when I'm using autopilot, or for a little bit I use full self-driving, and drivers behind me. And I say that because even when I drive, I usually look a car or two ahead and see what they're doing to then make my decisions about, accelerating, decelerating. And with autopilot, there is somewhat like a little bit of a delay. And so I'm often concerned that, because let's say in stop and go traffic, the car's at a standstill, cars ahead of me will start moving, and then there's just this little bit of a delay before this car moves, whereas the car behind me is starting to move. So it's just, shadow braking is also a huge problem, that if you're traveling, sometimes I'm driving here on the Van Wyck Expressway, traffic is going about 40, 45, and all of a sudden, then there's no real traffic ahead of me, but the car phantom brakes and then starts slowing down. Cars behind me, like, what the heck is this guy doing? So those are the big concerns of mine. Again, not really the driving of the car. It's just, I guess the technology can maybe create a space for an accident that doesn't need to be there. But hopefully over time, they continue to refine the self-driving of this vehicle. And I think that's it for 1 year. Just to recap everything, 1 year of driving, I've traveled 19,000, almost 20,000 miles, 19,838 miles or something like that. Total maintenance cost $7. Although maybe if I wanted to, I could change windshield wiper blades. Maybe do I will do tire rotation later this year. And then cost of charging, $2,195 and 2 miles to travel 20,000 miles. And again, that's probably on the high end of charging for an electric vehicle. If you're fortunate enough to have access to an outlet at home or at work, your costs for charging a vehicle will be significantly cheaper. With that, I want to tell my Tesla, happy birthday. It's treated me well. I'll finish by saying this. I love driving this car. I've always enjoyed driving, but I haven't loved driving every car that I've had. This car, I look forward to getting into it each and every day that I drive it, to work, to visit family, to visit friends, to take long road trips. I love this car. It's great. And so if you're thinking about getting an electric vehicle, not just a Tesla, but any electric vehicle, hopefully you found this information, this review, 1 year cost of ownership for this Tesla Model 3 informative. If you did, I'd appreciate if you smash the like button, subscribe, that'd be great, even better. But a couple of things that I close out with are, know your situation. And I think the most important thing that people need to do is bifurcate, separate out your day-to-day driving from long-term road trips, because those are two different kinds of things. For day-to-day driving, again, if you have access to an outlet or so, it'd be an amazing experience. If you don't have access to an outlet, if you're like me, live in an apartment building with you don't have garage parking, you have to park on the street, you only have to rely on public chargers, trust me, after about 2 weeks, you've got it all figured out. You'll know where your chargers are, how often you're going to be charging. So it just becomes part of your day, and you'll find ways to further incorporate it in your life. Whereas before, when I first got this car, I went out of my way to go charging. Now it's, again, let me go eat and go charge then. So not really an inconvenience in my life. All right, y'all. With that, I'm going to hop on out of here. Hopefully you found this enjoyable and informative. And until next time, take care and be well. Bye for now.